Welcome back to the SAR Experience with Saul and Caleb. We are honored to have our principal, Rabbi J. Kroll.
It's an honor to be here. The honor is mine.
How are you doing today, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, doing fantastic.
That's great. So the first question we ask, I don't know if you've been a listener, but we love to ask everyone, why did you choose SAR? And for you, it's unique because, you chose SAR, and then you left to Florida, obviously, and then you came back. So what went into that? How did you choose SAR in the first place, and then also how'd you leave and come back? How did that process go?
Okay, happy to share that. Some pieces of good SAR history. When the school started opened its doors in 2003, so during the previous school year, they were doing some hiring. I happened to have been, at the time I was teaching Yeshiva Flatbush, which was fantastic. I taught there for 7 years. I lived in Riverdale, though. And I was driving down the West Side Highway into Brooklyn, an hour and a half every day back and forth. Thought that was totally normal. We had one child at the time, or maybe two kids at the time, who were, one was in nursery school at SAR. So I was familiar with the school living in Riverdale. And I heard the school was thinking about opening up a high school. So I had reached out to Rabbi Harcsztark at the time to see whether they were hiring, what they're thinking about. One thing led to another, and the opportunity looked good. So I was like, okay, well, give it a try. It's kind of exciting to start to be a pioneering, kind of open faculty starting off at the new school. So for me, that was really exciting. I loved the school. My kid was there already in the nursery school, and I was like, I like Rabbi Harcsztark a lot, like the people involved in the school. Let's give it a whirl. That was my first go round. I was here for 10 years.
That's great. And how did, everyone knows that, SAR has two principals, you and Rabbi Harcsztark, but not a lot of people know how you guys navigate that. How do you guys, split up the work, maybe play each role, and do you guys ever discuss how to differentiate your roles?
Sure, that's a great question. I'd say the certainly is unconventional to have started off with two principals. I mean, you do find that there are different corporations that will have co-CEOs. Such things do exist. I would say the only reason why I think this worked and why I was excited about the opportunity is because we had previously worked before. We know each other very well. We have a lot of trust and appreciation for each other's skills. I think we do complement each other's skill sets nicely. And so I was excited. It was, to me, coming back to SAR, where we each would be serving roles of principals, for me was a feature, not a flaw in the system. I was really excited about it. I love him, love working with him. I think we were very intentional initially about not describing too much what the roles would be and how different they would be. This was an intentional decision. We wanted to see how things would organically develop and then write the job description from there, which is essentially what ended up happening over a couple of years. COVID threw us for a loop that first year I was back. But at the end of the day, we began dividing up our responsibilities based on where our interests were and what the school needed. And eventually that led to sort of crafting different positions for each other. In other words, like Rabbi Harcsztark now, a couple of years ago shifted to being, title was now no longer principal. We weren't just, he was founding principal and dean of Machon Siach. Yeah, listen, that could be its own podcast episode.
It could be. We could talk about the Machon Siach forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously we're all happy to have you back in town. You might miss the Florida weather a little bit, but we're very curious. What do you think is the biggest difference between your first stint here and the second stint here, whether it's among the faculty, students, et cetera?
Okay, great question. Here's the difference. I think the main difference is the age of a school more than the size. In other words, obviously the school's bigger. That matters to a certain extent. I think the thing that is the biggest difference is that my first go around, we were making stuff up completely as we went along. It was a bunch of people trying to figure out how to run a school, and there was we did not have systems in place. We did not have policies in place. And it was exciting. I mean, that's sort of like how you build a program, build a school, is by hiring good people, having good ideas, being collaborative with students, parents, faculty members, really building something. That's what starting a new school was like. I think coming back now, the school is an established school. It's been around for 22 years. I mean, it's an institution that has, has found its way. It has policies and procedures, and this is the way we operate things, what we believe in. It has been built. We were building something, and now something has been built. The challenge is being able to recognize that you are now in adulthood as a school while keeping some of that freshness and having that innovative spirit with you, so you don't feel like you're, an old man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get that completely. And Rabbi, as you know, we had I would say a controversial Buzz article recently. We don't really need to get so into that because, I don't know if you know, but we do have Gershon coming on our podcast.
I heard about that.
And we've talked about it before, so we're trying to save some of our content. But a question we have is, has there ever been an article similar to the Gershon one, but one that maybe pushed the needle too far and then was shut down? And if you could maybe touch on that, like what would something that would be too far? Because Rabbi Harcsztark gave a whole thing about how there's not exactly free speech, but we want to get as close as we can to free speech.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I don't know of things, I can't remember offhand. You should ask some of the, Dr. Schwartz or Vanik Schlaf are more involved in the kind of like the initial censoring of the Buzz, what kind of is fit to go to print. So you can ask them about the specific things. I think that I'm unfamiliar with anything that's been like sort of like outlawed. I'll tell you, at some point there was this is a good scoop behind the scenes. There was, we had with Gershon's article, and then the following edition of the Buzz was the letters to the editor. I wrote something in there.
Yeah, Ari Blechner, who also wrote an letter to the editor, will be on that same podcast.
Good. So, that'll be great.
Yeah.
So I look forward to listening to that one much more than I'm looking forward to listening to this one. So here's the interesting scoop. Like the editors of the Buzz, wanted to continue the conversation in a third edition of the newspaper. I was like, okay, the story has run its course. It's like enough. I'm not because it's controversial. It's enough already. It's like you've done too much. You've done plenty. Conversation has been had, and any more conversation is it's like not worth it, and I think beneficial. So again, that wasn't like a censorship of something that was too controversial. It was more like let's just be smart about having conversation that will be productive.
Yeah.
Obviously, SAR is a very open place that we allow for conversations like this, maybe not in other schools. But me and Saul are very curious. Maybe do you think that sometimes SAR is maybe a little too open or a little too progressive in that matter?
It's a good question. I think it's important to think about, what particular issues are, and so, I'd rather look at each case individually rather than think about, is a school too progressive, too open? It's like, look at each case individually. So I don't know if you want to ask me a specific question.
Yeah, actually, we do have a specific case. Yeah. Specifically when it comes to co-ed, Malva Malka, Tishes, there is a fantastic Malva Malka that I was able to catch the end of. It was co-ed and it was still amazing. But actually on Shabbos, I remember I asked the kid, I'm not going to say who it was, are you going to the Malva Malka tonight? And he was like, no, because there's girls there. It's like, then I don't really want to go. And obviously this Thursday, there's separate Lag BaOmer event. So I feel, and there's definitely been, specifically with the juniors, they're more from Hamish crowd. So I'm curious, how is it navigating that co-ed?
And if I could follow up real quick, though, I feel like wasn't there also discussion about maybe having a separate tish on the school-wide?
Yeah, good. Those are all great questions. I'll talk about that a little bit. So I think that there's, the way I look at it like this, is like SAR is a place where we value the ability for boys and girls to be able to interact in a way that is normal, wholesome, and religiously appropriate. We like that, and I want to push that, and I want to not shy away from that, while at the same time recognizing that it's also really good for boys to have time when they're hanging out with boys and girls to have time to hang out with the girls in a religious environment also. And so, so that's why, for example, I'll tell you like some of the thinking behind, I'll talk about the school-wide Shabbaton. We were discussing whether we thought it was going to be smart to mix things up, to separate things, to have a boys' tish and a girls'. We talked about that a little bit. And we decided that at an event that was like a major cultural kind of space for SAR, the school-wide Shabbaton, we should do our best to push what we think is like a primary value, which is guys and girls can religiously, spend time together in a wholesome, positive religious environment that can be both pro girls, pro boys, pro everything, like working out. So we chose to like be very intentional about that though, because I think that naturally the way things would go if you're not thinking about it, you're not working on it, is that it would be naturally the boys are usually more the leaders of something like a tish like that, and you'd have the rabbis who would be the ones running it, and the girls would feel like they're outsiders. We didn't want to have that either. We wanted to try to model something in which staff members sort of set a tone so that girls and boys, that means figuring out. It's not the boys are all in the center and the girls are on the back. Like planning that stuff so that the girls and the boys each feel like they're part of it, and it's modeling something we think good. So that's why you had at the Tish, you had, for example, Ms. Barris was like the Rebbe for the girls, and Rabbi Book was the Rebbe for the boys, and they sat together. And then you had Ms. Shiwitz talk, and yet different people spoke, so that I think it was like, I found it to be really beautiful, and I was happy about how that played out. That being said, I'm also thrilled that this Thursday night, there's a girls-only Lag BaOmer Kumsitz at Dr. Mitnick's house, and that there's a boys-only event where the boys are going to Eish Kodesh for a Hilula Darash B out there, which should be fantastic.
Is that Kodesh Yal?
No, that's not good.
That's the 5 towns. That's in the 5 towns. But I'm saying my point is like I'm not so doctrinaire to say every single thing must always be co-ed, and yet, like, there should be opportunities for other things as well, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we believe deeply that the co-ed nature of the school should be one that we think about, cultivate, and show as a model for how guys and girls can hang out together. Listen, I'd much rather have guys and girls hanging out at a Tish or learning Gemara than going to a party.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a perfect transition into the next topic, because obviously 2 years ago there was the infamous article in the Jewish Link about Purim X. If you want to get into that, maybe how you even got that idea in the first place to do it, give us everything.
Okay, yeah, sure. This is I don't think I've ever gotten more hate and love about the same thing together. Like, so many people are killing me. My own family was like so embarrassed of me, and like.
Well, isn't that just how being a principal is?
This was worse. This was much worse. I'll tell you a little bit about it though, the genesis of it, and what played out well, and what didn't play out well. My plan was at the time I was like, oh, there's so many kids invited to this program. I keep telling kids not to go to these things, and I keep talking about it. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to be like, I don't want to like go like undercover and pretend I'm like a teenager walking to the party. But I'm like, okay, minimally, I'll like drive over there and just take a look for a couple minutes and see what happens. I drove to the place. It was on a Saturday night after the school-wide Shabbaton. So I drove to this place, and as I pull up, I figured I was gonna be there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. I ended up being there for a long time because I pulled up. I didn't think you're gonna find parking at some place in the village. A car pulls out from directly in front of the club. I'm like, oh, okay, great parking. I didn't think I was gonna find anywhere to park. I thought I'd just be driving on the block for 5 minutes. I parked, and I was right in front of the place, and I was like, whoa, this is like I feel like an anthropologist watching like the natives in their natural habitat in a way that was like, I was like, whoa, this is so like, wow, it's like, I gotta get, planning on leaving in 5 minutes, but it's like kind of interesting. And I was like watching, okay. And then I stayed there till, and like I was like just watching like the scene going on outside. I was like surprised that nobody recognized me. One kid one drunk kid who was there, not an SAR kid, was looking for a place, I think, to sit down. So he opened up my car door to sit down. And saw I was there.
Well, I feel like the kids there are probably not expecting to see you
not.
there. So.
No, they were not. But I saw a bunch of SAR kids, saw the other kids from other yeshiva high schools, and it was, again, for me, it was a helpful thing. I actually felt very validated in what I had learned and what I could then talk about, which was, it seemed to me that the places actually were telling the truth. they were very strong about not letting any alcohol inside. And that seemed to be, borne out by like the reality there. What was interesting to me also was like, this is what I got a bird's eye view of, which I just never seen. The scene outside of it was, not something that, I think most parents would want their kids to go to. And, the drinking and the smoking was taking place outside. It was like, oh, actually, I got to see it with my own eyes, so I don't want to ever come back here and see this again, but I actually feel like the experience gave me, some insight. I was fully unprepared for what I would see. I think maybe it'll be much better than I thought, maybe much worse than I thought. It just was an interesting reality, and I think, from my perspective, allowed me to be a more informed, better educated educator.
Did you always plan on writing that article, or was really while you were sitting there, you're like, you know what, I have to tell everyone about this?
The morning, I was like Sunday morning, I'm happy to go back to my cell phone and like see if I could find the email. Mm-hmm. The morning after I got back, I walked out of Minion Sunday morning, and I was like, this is like so like, I wonder whether there'd be value in me sharing my experience with the broader community. So I emailed the Jewish link. I'm like, would you guys be interested in like me writing something about this? And they were like, basically, yeah, sure. I think they lightly edited some of my stuff. Maybe I was a little bit edgier, perhaps, but not. Mm-hmm. They didn't edit it much. So they said, yeah, please write it. So I sat down I sat down on Sunday, wrote it, got it to them on Monday, and then it was put in the paper, I think, the next week.
Was it at all maybe a little uncomfortable for you to see students of SAR there? Because as the principal of SAR, I mean, you see these kids in school all day, and then you see them in that environment. I mean, maybe vice versa. Like once they heard that you were there, did that maybe go into it at all, or were you worried about that at all?
I didn't like. Yeah, I didn't like the fact that I was there and it felt like undercover. I didn't like that. Again, had I seen like some really bad stuff happening, I would probably felt worse. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see really bad. I just saw what I kind of expected to see. And I guess there were some kids afterwards who I was closer with who wanted to talk with me about why they felt like they were disappointed in themselves or upset at me. We had some nice conversations, and I felt that here's the thing. I felt like my sort of like persona, image, and relationship with the kids in the school was such that I could afford to do this without sacrificing, too much credibility. I thought it was an important thing to do. Yeah. I think that kids generally, were seeing me as somebody who cared about them, and that was coming from that perspective, not from trying to catch somebody and get them in trouble.
Yeah, it was very clear that was your motive. It was coming from the heart and not to just try and get people in trouble, which is why I personally didn't really have an issue with it, or definitely much less of an issue with it than some others. And obviously there's these Purim X, these venue parties, but me and Saul are seniors, and in every senior year there's prom. It's not SAR sanctioned, and some schools like to take harder caps on prom than others. So what is your approach and SAR's approach to the inevitable prom situation that happens every year?
So let me say something. I guess I'm not at the point yet where I'm prepared to say the inevitable prom situation. Perhaps that's me being putting my head in the sand. I think that COVID seems to have changed things. It wasn't always the inevitable prom situation.
I think my sister's year was the first prom, actually, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
Or that would also be Charlie Eden's first.
Yeah, that would be.
So I'm not sure what the history of it is necessarily. Listen, I think it's a bad thing for a few reasons, and I've articulated that, and I will continue to articulate it. I think it is, some of the reasons are reasons that, kind of resonate more with kids. Some of the reasons that do not resonate as much with everybody. One of the things I think is most important is that, our school, like many other schools, has a wide range of kids who have different sort of I'd say religious practice. There will be plenty of kids who, would not be offended and consider it to be totally normal to go to an environment that would have, have behavior that would not be the kind of thing the school would approve of. Okay, people do things in their own time. I don't have as much of a problem if kids do that at at a party on a Saturday night that I may not approve of, or it's different. The thing that's different here, in my view, is that there's something that's a culminating event of like our 4 years together. We, celebrating our 4 years together, and the things that rub me the wrong way about it are twofold. One of them is, it feels like it's a bit of a slap in the face to the school. It's like, it's like like our culminating thing is something that, we're doing something that we know the school wouldn't approve of. Okay, but I understand kids aren't thinking of it like that. Kids are like, okay, we just want to have fun. That's nothing personal against you, Rabbi. I get that when I talk to kids. I'm just telling you how I experience it as a principal. That's like one thing. The other thing which I think it resonates more with kids, and I think is a real thing. There are plenty of kids in your grade who don't feel comfortable in that kind of environment. And they would not show up to, let's say, a party on a Saturday night at someone's house, because that's not the kind of environment they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like an end-of-year culminating thing for our seniors, they're going to feel like they're supposed to go to that, because to not show up is to be holier than thou and to insult other people. Some people still won't show up. Don't get me wrong. They'll say, "This is not my thing." And a couple years ago, I went out to dinner with like a crew of like 20 boys. Went to La Marais that night. That was going on. That was like great. But I think that's something I don't like. I don't like the fact that there are kids who would not want to go, would not otherwise go, but feel like pressured that they're supposed to go, because this is what it means to be part of the class.
But are you saying that a lot because it kind of has the SAR stamp on it, and that's what because as you're saying, like a random party on Saturday night, these kids might go, but now that it has the SAR stamp,
yeah, that's why. Yeah, I do feel that way. I feel that way because listen, I'm not. This is not like this is not like a battle I'm willing to kind of put all of my energy into and do everything I can to stop it. I appreciate, again, I don't like it. I'm not happy with it. I wish it didn't happen, and I try to kind of push against it and have it be not be a big thing. Listen, that being said, it's a meaningful gesture that I understand it's planned for after you've graduated. Yeah, I guess I see that as I guess I'm more appreciative of that than if it took place the week before.
Yeah.
That being said, it's like I'm not giving up hope. I'm not throwing in the towel just yet.
Mm-hmm.
You also talked about the culmination, and honestly, I never personally thought of it that way. I kind of think of the SAR dinner and we're going to Morsha, is that right?
Yeah,
we're going to Morsha. I think of that as the culmination.
Yeah.
And even I was with a few friends last night. We were all talking about how excited we are for that. So I would kind of disagree, honestly, and I don't see it as much as a culmination. I think maybe the social pressure thing is very real and could possibly be dealt with better. But I actually see the SAR dinner and Shabbaton as more.
I appreciate that. Yes, and that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. I hope that's how. I appreciate that you said that. And I appreciate that's hopefully the vibe for a lot of people. And I think that's what we're trying to do with having those sort of activities at the end of the school year. And hopefully that's something that'll be a little more dominant. That being said, I would like, it would please me if we should do this. What are we doing?
I think it'd be weird if you liked us that we had prom.
Yeah.
You're like, yay, prom.
No, it's not just the like. It's like it would give me great pleasure if kids in the school were to say, why do we have to be like the regular, typical, stereotypical American teenagers who do this kind of stuff? It's so, I don't know. I love you guys. You're terrific. Mm-hmm. Okay, whatever you do, you're fantastic in my book, and you can't do wrong. Okay. That being said, it's like I wouldn't say it's a sellout. It's like a buying into the American cultural expectation of what it means to be a regular teenager. And I'm like, okay, you guys are going to be, excuse me, you guys are holier than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously when it comes to prom, we were talking about kids that are sometimes more on the more religious side of the spectrum, but obviously SAR is a whole spectrum, and sometimes we have kids around the less religious side of the spectrum, which becomes sort of an interesting thing when we talk about yeshiva gap years and sometimes non-yeshiva gap years. So Me and so I'm very curious, just in general, what's your take on maybe when kids go to a non-yeshiva program?
Every kid's his own kid. I think that by and large, kids are going to great programs. Are there some program like the school's an Orthodox institution? We buy into, kids valuing the values of the school, shmir mitzvot, and like continued Torah learning. I also recognize that there's a lot of kids coming from different places, and kids go to the places that are best for them. I think it's, if I felt like there were lots of kids going to programs that I thought were really bad for them, I'd feel differently. We have a lot of kids going to great programs. It's a wide spectrum. The kids going to this program, going to whatever. I don't want to name names, but you can imagine there's some programs I feel like not my cup of tea, but okay, it's a different kid's cup of tea. I value that and respect it, and there's certain choices people will make.
Touching on that spectrum of religiosity we have here, do you think that there is a safe space where kids won't feel uncomfortable doing this, where they can question the existence of God or critique God?
So it's an interesting question. I get whiplash talking to kids and parents about this sort of thing. And I think the whiplash may be a good indicator. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I think there are just as many people, I don't know the numbers. I get plenty of kids who tell me, I don't want to go to Mach class because in Mach, I am taught the, things like the classical proofs of God's existence or questions about the theodicy. And I'd rather just have Emunah Pshuta, not think about those sorts of things. I am fine. And this is too edgy. And then I'll have people who will say, I need more space to be able to think about this. And, I'm doing so much Gemara and so much Tanakh, and I would rather have more space to question and consider. And so I'll tell you, I think Mach plays an important role. I think that, over the course of the past couple of years, we developed this VOD program. I'm not sure if you've had that in your classes.
Oh, I've had it all 4 years.
You have had it all 4 years.
It does sometimes turn into us just talking about the tests we have that day.
You gotta try to avoid that, but have it be about real things. People talking about things that are on their mind.
Shout out Ms. Strafansky.
There you go.
Ms. Strafansky listens. She loves VOD.
And so I think that I like to think that kids have those connections and relationships with the teachers who respect them. I think that one of the things that I'm very proud of in the school is that I think that the teachers in the school are very respectful of the kind of religious spaces that kids occupy and recognize the big differences. And there's not there's trying to help kids grow, but help kids grow from where they are. And what might be necessary for one kid, which is to really be open to questioning and to thinking and to exploring and doubting, that should be respected and valued. And I think we do that. Try to push that with teachers, while at the same time feeling like the kid who I don't want to. I got no question. Not that I want to have a nice tish. I want to sit and steig. Great, you should have that too. That's part of the. I think there's a beauty in the way I look at this. Is one of the things I think is very beautiful about SAR, and there's really something that we can make happen here in a way that I think is unique to our school environment and our demographic and the culture, is to have different people who are doing different things to a degree and are united and respectful of each other. And that might be frommer kids and a little bit less from kids. It might be politically liberal kids, politically conservative kids. It might be, there's a way to promote that, respect that, and to be curious, respectful kids in a way that feels like it might be an antidote to the broader kind of culture wars.
Yeah, I feel like what you just said, I saw in my Tanakh class this year when we were you kind of just described an Adam 2 and an Adam 1 type of person. In my Tanakh class this year, with Ms. Shiwitz, that was the first Tanakh class where I really felt like we challenged Hashem's actions and why he does things, and it did open my eyes a lot that you don't always have to just like we assume that Hashem has the right plan and that Hashem is benevolent, but it's an important thing to question him and to challenge the actions that Hashem did and does on a daily basis. And I think it's very important that like our Tanakh class, especially in a senior year when maybe you're more mature, has that space.
I completely agree with you, and I think that's a value that I want to promote. I want if you ask questions and you're challenging questions, that means you're like a believer. If you're apathetic and you don't care and you just go on with like whatever, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not like belief. Belief is to actually ask questions, to think, and to be. It's like it reminds me. I don't remember who said this. The great, line as to what maybe some Hasidic Rebbe who says this. The purpose of what's the purpose of kfira? What's the purpose of heresy, of doubt, of not believing in Hashem? Says part of the purpose of doubt is that you'll be more likely to give tzedakah. In other words, you're not 100% confident that Hashem is going to take care of everybody. You got to be able to act also.
I mean, what's faith without doubt? That's what we learned in Makala.
Yeah, so maybe switching topics a little bit to something that affects other schools. Recently in the Yeshiva League, there's been a new policy about anti-negative chanting, and if I'm not mistaken, you were one of the people that spearheaded that change. To let you know, me and Saul are not the biggest fans of it, but maybe you can convince us otherwise.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, that is true. I was one of the people behind it. There was this little. I'm not sure this came up in Coach Joffe's thing.
It did.
There's a committee of kind of the principals of the Yeshiva High School, athletic league that meet and come up with policies and got involved in setting tone and things like that. I was behind the idea of making. It actually connects something I said before a few minutes ago when you asked me about prom. I think there's certain. I understand that it's very fun when you go to the college games or even pro games. You stand, you're in the stands at the baseline, and the guy's shooting free throws, and you'll do all sorts of screaming and nonsense and funny things to get the guy off his game, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. I totally get that. That's fun. That's part. And I even say, it's not. It's part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like. It's not like I don't go to like. I don't look at the fans at a Duke game and say like, what is wrong with these monsters cheering against the guy shooting free throws? But you're allowed to do that. That's like part of that's part of the culture. I get it. I look at it and say like, I don't need to accept every aspect of the culture that we're in, and I'd like to try to shift it a little bit. So, for example, I'll tell you, I originally was in favor of, again, I still am. When the policy came out, it did not say anything about free throws. Mm-hmm. I mean, the policy was, it's just such a cultural part of it. Mm-hmm. Make noise, we're not going to, but there was a distinction between that and negative chants. Like, I'll tell you, I guess when not that Saul Harcsztark as a big man who likes to shoot the three and connects frequently. If chas v'shalom, there was a time when Saul would have shot an air ball, I would not want the crowd chanting air ball.
See, as the player,
you would be happy with that. It would give you vigor. It'd make you want to fight back more.
I mean, I think the issue I think with it for me is that I think all players want it. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, nobody wants the air ball and then be like heckled at, or for example, we played Eula one time, and some kid mid play just slapped me on the back for no reason, just slapped me. Yeah. Which that might be pushing the needle a little bit.
We're not suggesting that reflects anything about the Yeshiva University of Los Angeles.
Oh no, we love
a random kid.
The Eula rabbi is my favorite fan in the Yeshiva League with his hockey jersey. Yeah. I'm not even sure it was a Eula fan. There was the whole Globerman tournament was there, but I think it like fires the players up and it fires the crowd up and it creates a more competitive environment.
Here's the thing: you can't make. I hear there's some things like that and some things not like that. Like for example, I remember don't remember what school. This was a few years ago, playing some school. There's some kid who was like, at some other school. I don't remember what the circumstances were precisely, but he had made some kind of like he was like a TikTok star of some fashion or another. Everyone I don't want to. There may be something very embarrassing about him on TikTok. The kid was at the free throw line, and you had the entire crowd chanting "Tick tock, tick tock," and I was like, "What's going on?" They're like, "Oh yeah, that guy had a really embarrassing." Like, to me, again, is it the worst thing in the world? No. Is it something that I feel like is like noble to try to avoid that kind of like mockery of people? I think so. And so, I don't know, I just feel like it's a value to try to be a little bit better and not be offensive. I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't know if you do it, but I like to say that I think there's something about. I'm very proud of the fact when our fans act classy, and I'm very proud of the fact, particularly if we're playing against another school and their fans are not classy. I'm like, oh, this is the SAR kids. I like that.
I mean, at my TABC baseball game the other night, I had the whole TABC bench actually saying, "Put it on the podcast, Saul."
Oh,
Put it on
nice.
the yeah, I thought that was fun. I was like,
Also,
you guys are fans.
listen,
Nice.
this is great. So the fun fact connected to something earlier in the podcast. So that when that Jewish Link article came out, that was the Friday. That was the week before the SAR Frisch hockey championship, and that was like a dramatic. SAR came from behind.
Shout out Gabe Hormel.
A classic victory. Very. I got tremendous hana out of the fact that at some point in the game, I'm in the arena, which it was in DRS, and the Frisch kids started chanting at me, "Jewish Link, Jewish Link,"
I think that's epic.
and Purim X. And they're chanting at me. I felt great. I was like, wow. You guys read my article. I really appreciate that.
That's what I said. The TABC guys said.
It's true.
That makes
You guys
me
are
feel,
fans.
They're
that makes
fans.
You,
They're
that makes
fans.
me feel great about myself. I was like, that was like a highlight for me.
So yeah, obviously, we have this rep to the other schools, and I think we always talk about, and Rabbi Hartsztark was talking about it, how it's our job to fight for that rep against the other schools, as well as when we're in the building to kind of just block it out. And I definitely do agree with that on many levels. But I am curious, maybe sometimes you wish that maybe there just wasn't that sort of stigma around SAR. It doesn't really bother you at all.
Oh no, I don't like the stigma. I don't like the stigma. I don't like it as a stigma. I would just say that if you get back to like the what's it called, that article piece, like I totally understand why some people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. Why you do it? Like, I hear it. But I also in my view, it's the kind of thing where I thought I tried to articulate this in my response. I could understand that there's a couple of sides to look at this. I'm trying to promote a side which is maybe you'll say it's a little more libertarian, maybe you'll say it's a little bit more respectful of like listening to other people's opinions. I kind of want to I want kids to say like, yeah, I get that. Kids can say things and think things and talk about things in ways that are not all kind of like the standard approach, and we're good with that. I like that about my school. I'll be honest. Israel is much more hot button to be able to talk about, and I get why it was as much of a lightning rod as it was. I totally get that. I don't like having. I wouldn't like it if people think that means that there's something. If people try to reduce that, saying, "Oh yeah, you're not support," it's like, no, dude. If you've been in our school, please give me a break. Say the SAR is not half of our kids serve in the army. We promote that. That's the vibe here. You can't get more pro-Israel.
Yeah, I just want to say that my cousin, when he came last year, he was in the IDF and came and visited all the schools and said that SAR was the best with Israel by far.
I think,
so.
and I like to think that that's the case, and I want kids to be proud. But also, you know what? I also understand. I don't know, if I'm you, I'm like, okay, I don't want to get like a text from my cousin who's telling me I heard that there's like an anti-Semite in your school. Dude, I get why. If you're a kid, just like, okay, I want to come to school and not have to deal with like nonsense like that. So I think that it's important as a school to be mindful of that and take into consideration the fact that like Saul Hochheiser and Caleb Eden, you don't want to like deal with that kind of stuff too frequently, but I also don't want to back down and be, sort of like, just hide. But you got to be smart about how.
Yeah. And I mean, like, as we're going to yeshiva next year, it's very prevalent because they're gonna be like, oh, I'm Saul Hochheiser, where are you from? Oh, I went to SAR. And kids with no real context of it, there's a certain stereotype that comes to mind.
You will get, again, the girls in tefillin is like the standard thing. That like really is the gift that keeps on giving. It is like, people just don't understand like what the reality is in our school. And I think it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, I also am very heartened by the fact that when I go to all the yeshivas in Israel, and the SAR kids are from the wide range of yeshivas and seminaries and programs the kids are at, the kids are awesome. And they have a certain confidence, a certain leadership, a certain buy-in, an energy that is great. So okay, yeah, you have. It doesn't bother me much if a couple of dopes, mock and silly. It's like, rise above it and just like prove yourself.
Yeah, I just want to say when I visited yeshivas this year, every single one that I visited said they love SAR kids.
They're great.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was in Israel in February visiting all the yeshivas and a bunch of the seminaries. I was so proud. I was like, this is awesome. You go to all these places. Every yeshiva, like the kids are doing great, and it's like makes me feel very. I'd like to think that the school had something to do with shaping kids who are confident, energetic, they buy in, they have fun, and they know how to work hard.
Yeah, I mean, Jaffe touched on that.
I gotta bring Jaffe to Israel, no?
Yeah,
I
Jaffe.
think he's going soon for the first time ever.
He
I
did
know.
say.
I think when you guys are there next year.
Yeah.
Right?
You got.
I think I gotta bring Jaffe.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
Jaffe's freshmen.
Yeah,
Jaffe's freshmen with us.
Okay, I'm gonna put this on the podcast. Let's get this right. Let's bring Jaffe to
Bring
Israel.
Jaffe to Israel.
Hashtag bring Jaffe to Israel. That'd be good. But we're talking about such great things about SAR, and I think a main thing is the rep. I was about to say that Jaffe was saying every tournament, the hosts of the tournament are saying how great the SAR kids are. But as the principal, this might be a tough question. Do you have any criticisms about SAR that you wish were better, or any directions maybe you want shifted in any regard?
So I think that some of the things you touched upon that we've spoken about are areas I think we need refining on and improvement on. I think the question that we highlighted initially, the being able to, like I said with Tish's, figuring out how to put forward proudly and boldly that we think that boys and girls in a co-ed yeshiva high school environment can model religiously idealistic behavior, fantastic. I also want to provide those spaces for, boys to be, being an all-boy environment, girls being an all-girl environment. I think figuring out, navigating that is a challenge I don't think we've figured out so well yet, and I'm not sure what to do. That's like one area. Listen, other areas of criticism, I gotta be honest, the kids in the school are fantastic. I find them to be just very receptive. I don't know if you see what's going on right now with the 9th grade cell phone stuff?
Yeah, we
we've
actually,
heard of that.
someone texted us to ask about that. So if you want to go
I'll
detail
tell you,
about
it's
that.
like this is something that I love, but I say, okay, listen. We started a pilot with 9th graders, like really coming down harder on cell phone usage, making their floor a phone-free zone, and like we gave them these pouches to keep their phones in, and they can't have them out. They'll take your phone away for the day. Kids, obviously, nobody likes to have their life restricted. What we did though was something interesting. Rolled this out yesterday. Voluntarily, we're not monitoring you. We're gonna have a voluntary thing now for another group of kids. Anybody hands their phone in for the day at breakfast, and you get it back at the end of the day. You do that for the rest for a week. We're gonna have a nice catered lunch for you on Monday.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I had
I would do that.
I would 100% do
We
that.
had 40. I said to myself, like, okay, if I get 5 kids, it'll be great. I'm aiming for like 10. I had 40-something freshmen hand in their phones voluntarily today. Then I got a bunch of sophomores who were like, oh, I know this is not for, can we do this also? I'm like, yeah, sure. It's like, there is something that I like a lot about the school is that the kids feel like the grown-ups in the school aren't trying to like trick them into learning or doing something they don't want to do. I think that kids in the school feel very much, again, like as much as you can in high school. Like yeah, we get it. We like the staff. We like the teachers. We're like with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think the phones in school. I'm one that has had my phone taken away, specifically by Miss Schneider a few times. But those days where I don't have my phones, I'm always like, wow, everyone is just staring at their screens. Like when we're in the GLC, there'll be 7 kids there and they're all on their phones. And I'll put my phone down for a second. I think it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, especially for freshmen with how.
We'll see what happens, man. Again, I'll be honest, I'm not sure where this is going to land. You will not, won't matter to you. You'll have long graduated. Definitely, the attitude of the school is one that is, again, much more respectful of kids, a little more like kind of giving them their own space and being responsible, all that. I mean, I don't know, this experiment is only a few days old, so I'm not sure where this is going to land. It sure feels like many kids are embracing a certain liberty of not being tethered to their phones and not being like enslaved by them. We'll see where this lands. I anticipate that it's not going to be as laissez-faire, I think, as we've been in the past.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure everyone watching knows, but our great guest, Rabbi Kroll, has donated his kidney. And we would love if you could speak about the process of that, because it's such an amazing thing to donate. It's such an amazing thing to donate a kidney to someone like a loved one or a friend, but to do it to someone you've never even met before.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the credit. I'm very it was a proud moment of my life. I really liked the opportunity. It actually happened because of SAR. It wasn't like it didn't come from me. But I was teaching a class in school a few years ago about halachas of kidney donation, and I came across this organization called Renewal, which is a wonderful organization that helps facilitate, makes it easier for people to donate kidneys to people who need kidneys. I was like, that sounds like a really interesting thing. I feel bad talking about how awesome it is and not actually like kind of participating. I'm like, I got 2 good kidneys. You only need 1. I'll put my name. I'll take a cheek swab and see what happens if I'm a match for somebody. And like a little bit less than a year later, I ended up being a match for somebody. I got a ton of tests. They make you go through all these physical, psychological, different tests to make sure you're donating for the right reason. I gave to some guy who I've never met him before. I had met him. I did meet him since. A guy who was on dialysis, and it was easy. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the prep for it and stuff like that. And my recovery, until I was fully recovered, like 100%, was 6 weeks. But it was like 1 week till you're like 60% recovered. 2 weeks you're like 80% recovered, and then like it wasn't. So they do it laparoscopically. It's a small incision that they do the surgery with, and it was. I wouldn't recommend it for an 18 or 19-year-old, but I don't know. I was like 52 years old at the time. I'm like, okay, I don't think anybody. I'm a generally healthy guy. People in my family doesn't look like they're going to need my kidneys. Everyone's pretty healthy. Let's go for it. So it worked out, and I feel great about it. My wife and I go out to dinner with the guy who got my kidney and his wife a couple times a year. It's really nice. You feel because the guy was on dialysis for a long time, and he now has a quality of life that you feel. It's a great opportunity. The organization is a great organization, and I would really encourage people to take it seriously, to look into the possibility of it.
Yeah, so that's donating kidney is obviously one of the biggest chesed you can do, and right now you're involved in another very big chesed, which is the Ethiopian Jewish community. And obviously yesterday we had a fantastic rabbi who's the head of the Ethiopian Jewish community in Israel come and speak. So curious how you got into that, how recently that was, and what we can do to help.
Yeah, great question. I got into it very recently. If you had asked, I'm a little embarrassed to say this. If you had asked me, 6 months ago, how many Ethiopian Jews remain in Ethiopia. I was that, I'm like 10, 20, I have no idea. It's like thousands, okay? And it's a complicated political situation in terms of their ability to make aliyah. There's a lot of, people who are really pushing hard for them to be able to make aliyah. They want to make aliyah.
What's barring them from that?
There's the government does not recognize the Jews who are in Ethiopia as being eligible to make aliyah under the law of return. Questions about sort of origins. Many of the Ethiopians who are in Ethiopia right now, at some point in their family history, may have converted to Christianity or come from Christian Ethiopians. So there's a bit of debate about that. But I'll tell you, when I got there, got like thousands of people that all speaking Hebrew, singing on tikva, putting on tefillin, wearing tzitzis, wearing yarmulkes, davening. It's like, they all want to make aliyah. I'd say I caveat, I'm an American guy who went there for a few days. I don't know everything, but what my eyes told me is that there's a group of people here who are willing to go to Israel, willing to do a giur, to be able to classified as Jewish, and they want to contribute to and identify the Jewish people. I just want to be involved with that. Part of what we can do is help raise money. They're very poor. Whether they're going to, even if they're not going to go to Israel, they need food, they need money, they need medicine, and it's really dire, the situation there. I don't think the people on this podcast are going to necessarily be able to have the political pressure that they're going to exert on Israeli politicians to make it easier for them to make aliyah. But I think there's the ability to give money and to also just be aware that they're of Ethiopian culture and customs as part of the broader understanding of Klal Yisrael. Like, that's something that I really gained from, and I want to incorporate that into the life and the teaching in the schools to learn more about Ethiopian Jewry than we actually learn about. It's part of Klal Yisrael.
But didn't Rav Ovadia Yosef say that he classified that all those Ethiopian Jews were actually Jews?
Yeah.
Is this group that is still different?
So Rav Ovadia poskin that, and that was the authoritative psak. There is a bit of a question as to whether the Jews who are in Ethiopia right now are in that same category. Many of the poskim in Israel say, yes, they're Jewish, bring them in. And I look at, in my limited understanding of things, I look at it as like got people who want to make aliyah, who are identifying as Jewish, who say, even if you don't think I'm fully Jewish, I'm willing to go through a conversion process. I'm like, let's help these people. I get there's a lot of money involved. It's very hard. There's a lot of social questions. But I think there's just at least minimally having an awareness of the rich history of the Ethiopian Jewish community, and more awareness of what's going on right now. That's minimally what kids can do.
Yeah.
This might be a little bit of a shift, but what are your thoughts on is it Charedi or Hasidic community? Charedi community
is within the Charedi community.
Yeah, not serving in the army in Israel, especially during wartime where all people are needed.
Listen, I think in my mind, now we get perhaps this is a little controversial. I don't know. This is my own personal view. This is not a view that I'm teaching necessarily in the school. Is the way I look at things. I have no problem with the Charedi community in the United States, the Charedi community in Europe. I have no problem. If you want to dedicate, exclusive time to Talmud Torah and not buying into, let's say, certain cultural values the modern Orthodox world buys into, kol hakavod. You do you, I do me, and I value that, and I think you're contributing nicely to the Jewish community. I think there's a huge difference, though, when you're talking about the Haredi community in Israel. I think the inability to share the burden with the rest of the Jews who are protecting through serving in Sahel is something that is I'll just say it's shameful. I don't, it's not my community, so it's harder for me to criticize from without. I think there is some movement. I think that since October 7th, there is greater movement of people being a little more interested in getting involved in serving, and I'm hoping that there will be more movement on that. But it's very disappointing to me. And again, I like loving everybody. Okay, I like to see the good in everybody. This is something that I find very troubling, and I think is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a thing we've discussed is that you can learn anywhere. You know, you don't need to set your entire life for learning, and that's why you can't go to the Army. I mean, there are people in the Army that learn while they're in combat on base, and that's a huge thing. It's like, why, just because you're doing one thing doesn't mean you can't do another.
Listen, I think it would be, but here, I don't know who your rest of your guests are on the podcast. I think it would be interesting.
We have Dr. Schwartz tomorrow.
I think it'd be good to have somebody on the podcast who's actually not somebody who has a she has a much deeper familiarity, familially within the Charedi world than I do. But I think it'd be great to have somebody who's like actually buys into, believes in, and is kind of offering it like personally a different perspective than the perspective that I'm giving you, or that, you know, even somebody with familiarity with the community would give. I think it'd be great to have somebody who's like a Haredi guy who believes that they're doing the right thing by not serving the army and protecting the Jewish people through their Torah learning. I think that'll be interesting to get somebody who actually, you know, buys into that set of beliefs. You know, listen, I don't buy that, and I'm just kind of, you know, I'm with you, Saul. It's like plenty of guys in Hesed yeshivas are big Talmidei Chachamim, and they can serve for their time in the army and then go back and learn for the rest of their lives and contribute and be rebbeim. And there are a tremendous number of religious Zionist Talmidei Chachamim who are first-rate Talmidei Chachamim. And so, you know, I find it upsetting.
Yeah, so obviously you have a job to get to running this great institution, but for the end of the pod, I would say you're obviously the principal. What would your pitch for SAR be to all the viewers out there? Maybe there's someone watching that's deciding about high school for next year, or in 2 years, or in 3 years.
Okay, a couple things. Here's my
Can't give one pitch.
I know.
I'll give my basic pitch is that SAR is a respectful, exciting place where there is high level of Torah learning, high level of general studies. Kids are happy, kids are respected, and the vibe is incredible. Again, it get more complex, but that's like my pretty much my elevator pitch is that when you come to the school and you see the energy around learning, not just like having fun. Okay, it's like you walk into you can't overstate just how awesome the experience of learning Torah in the Beit Midrash is. It's central, it's exciting, it's beautiful, and like you don't realize it yet, but you've been shaped by those things. And you'll see when you go to Israel next year, you've gained something from that that's intangible that I think you'll appreciate that you may not be able to actually appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think SAR has done a great job in preparing us for Israel, college, and beyond for, you know, our views or faiths being challenged, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'm like, listen, it is very gratifying for me to see also. I don't think it's coincidental that so many of kind of like leaders on college campuses, certainly post October 7th, and even within the different college communities and the Jewish communities they have in different colleges, are SAR grads. Like that, it's giving kids a certain confidence to step up and make themselves heard, which is something that we really try to promote actively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
All
for
right,
coming
thank
on
you
the
so
pod.
much,
Rabbi.
Awesome.
Rabbi.
Thanks so much, guys. Been a pleasure.
Yeah, that was just an epic podcast with Rabbi Kroll. And I think it's honestly amazing that like SAR gives us the opportunity to just sit down with their principal and talk about these issues. And maybe, I don't know if other schools would, but I've definitely never seen that or
Yeah.
heard of that.
It is amazing how open he is to conversation and some of the stuff that we wanted to talk about that we were maybe a little wary that he would, because, you know, it's tough as a principal and maybe a leader of a community to put yourself out there. But I don't know, shout out to Rabbi Kroll for being willing, and not just willing, but open.
Enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, he's very excited to talk about it and kind of I know we're supposed to make him feel comfortable as he's our guest, but I feel like
He made us feel comfortable
to talk
100%.
about.
And I'd say that's also just like SAR in general. They really try their best to try and make us feel comfortable. And we did talk about that and try and maybe open up a little more even. But yeah, SAR is a school that wants the kids to feel comfortable talking to their faculty about almost any issue possible.
Yeah.
All right.
This has been the SAR Experience with Saul and Caleb. We were so happy to have Rabbi Kroll here. See you guys.